accusing me or shouting at me is very helpful.
No one's shouting, sister.
To your case.
Well, I don't really think I'm shouting at you. I'm just telling you, for someone who is here doing an interview on this case.
Please stop. Please stop. That's enough. This interview is now over. Thank you for your time.
Well, you're going to hear more about this.
And there you have it. Do you remember when Jordan Peterson went on a British TV station called Channel 4? He was interviewed by their star anchor, Kathy Newman is her name, who clearly had her instructions: attack Peterson in all ways, at all costs, all the time. But Peterson was just cool like a cucumber. And it was amazing. It was gorgeous. Here's a minute of that, just as a reminder of what it was like.
Well, you say there are whole disciplines in universities forthrightly hostile towards men. These are the areas of study dominated by the postmodern stroke neo-Marxist claim that Western culture in particular is an oppressive structure created by white men to dominate and exclude women. But then I want to put
minorities too dominate.
Okay, sure. But I want to put to you that here in the UK, for example, let's take that as an example, the gender pay gap stands at just over 9%. You've got women at the BBC recently saying that the broadcaster is illegally paying them less than men to do the same job. You've got only 7 women running the top FTSE 100 companies.
Yeah.
So it seems to a lot of women that they're still being dominated and excluded, to quote your words back to you.
It does seem that way, but multivariate analysis of the pay gap indicate that it doesn't exist.
But that's just not true, is it?
That's
I mean, that
absolutely
9% pay gap, that's a gap between median hourly earnings between men and women.
But there's
that exists.
Yeah, but there's multiple reasons for that. One of them is gender, but it's not the only reason.
Oh, that was so painful. You know, tens of millions of people saw that clip around the world as perhaps the worst example ever of a bad faith journalist. You know, she said the phrase, "So you're saying," 35 times in the interview. And every time she said something that he actually had not said, sometimes the opposite of what he said. It was her twisted attempt to argue against a straw man she had concocted in her own head, as opposed to the real Jordan Peterson she was lucky enough to have in studio. It was just amazing. I can't believe she's still working at Channel 4, but I'm sort of glad she is. That's their kind of news, and we all know it. So that was 7 years ago now, but I stumbled upon an interview yesterday that is even more amazing, more majestic, more incredible, more revealing than that one. It's an audio recording, though, not a video. So we won't be able to see the faces of the two people involved, which I deeply regret because I really wish I could see the journalist's face. Towards the end of this one, the interviewer actually sounds like she's going to start to cry. And I wish I could tell if she really was. Now, this video was uploaded just yesterday, and I encountered it, but it had originally been put online actually last year, but it had so few views. I'm guessing that most of you viewers tonight have not encountered this. I'm a pretty big media consumer, and I didn't stumble upon it till yesterday. So I'm taking the risk of showing it to you now, but I don't think you've seen it before. This was actually a year ago. I'm talking about this 25-minute interview where a CBC reporter named Jordan Tucker, who is just amazing. I mean, here she is in her rainbow glasses. According to her bio, she is a journalist and writer with a degree in English and environmental studies. What a combination that is. It doesn't look like she publishes a lot with the CBC, but when she does, oh, it really counts. Here's one of her very important stories. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh. How Pokemon Go is transforming downtown Prince George. Online game is helping change attitudes towards downtrodden downtown core. Yeah, I'm sure it is, sister. You go with that. Here's another very important investigative story she wrote. Geese have taken over a BC beach. Enter the dog squad. Dogs involved will wear a goose patrol labeled vest or bandana. That's funny, but I don't think she meant it to be funny. I kid you not, each of those major investigative reports needed 2 reporters at the CBC. I'm surprised it wasn't more. So we're dealing with a heavy hitter here when I mention Jordan. That was the interviewer. And the interviewee who put this up on her YouTube channel yesterday, that's how I came across it. Frances Widdowson, a professor and author and critic of something that's called the Indian industry sometimes. That is the permanent class of lawyers, bureaucrats, and politicians, many of them who are not Indigenous, that live off the misery of Canada's First Nations. It's sort of the deep state, everyone involved with grants and lawsuits and stuff. Anyway, so Frances Widdowson, a year ago, was going to northern BC to give a talk, and young Jordan Tucker from the CBC had some tough questions for the good professor. But this wasn't Widdowson's first rodeo. She knows who the regime media are and what they're like. She might not have known who Jordan Tucker was unless she follows stories about goose patrols and Pokemon Go. But I mean, it's the CBC, right? Say no more. So she wisely recorded her own interview and was kind enough to tell that to Jordan Tucker. I'm surprised Jordan had her breakdown, given that she knew she was being recorded. Now, the interview is about 25 minutes long. And I guess I could just show you a few excerpts, but I promise you, it is too good just to have a sample. I really want you to hear the whole thing. It was a masterclass by Widdowson and a devastating proof of just how absolutely awful the CBC is, especially when it comes to official narratives of the Canadian political establishment. Like in this case, the subject of the hoax, there was 215 bodies in a mass grave in Kamloops in an old residential school. It was not. It was ground-penetrating radar that found some anomalies underground, but they did not excavate. Those anomalies could have been anything. It could have been rocks. It could have been an old septic field. It could, theoretically, even be a regular graveyard. They had those at these residential schools. It was not a mass grave. We don't know that there's bodies in there at all. No one has excavated. So that is the subject matter here. But you've got to listen. Well, you got to listen to that, but you got to listen to the whole thing. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play this recording, and I'm going to stop it midway, maybe 5 times, and give you my quick thoughts. But really, nothing I could say could trump just the sheer gorgeousness of what you are about to hear. I promise you, the next 25 minutes will go by very quickly. So maybe get a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and sit down. Here, let's listen to this incredible interview together. So that's Frances Widdowson on the left, of course, and that's our friend Jordan on the right. And this was an interview they had last year. Take a listen.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi there, I can, yes.
Awesome. Okay. So I do have the recording on.
Okay,
so you know.
I'm recording this as well.
Yes. Oh, okay. Sounds good. Okay, so do you think that you could introduce yourself for me? Your name?
Frances.
First and last?
Yes, Frances Widdowson.
Okay, and what you do?
I'm a professor. I was a professor at Mount Royal University, which is a story in its own right about my ongoing dispute with Mount Royal.
Okay. And what do you do now?
I'm a writer, and basically I'm a senior fellow with the Frontier Center for Public Policy, and I'm a board member for the Society for Academic Freedom and Scholarship.
Okay, cool. All right, so why are you going to Quesnel?
I'm going to Quesnel to address the misinformation that was spread by the city councilors at the meeting on March 19th.
And what misinformation is that?
Well, the first is that many of the councilors didn't appear to have read the book and were making comments about it on the basis of their own speculation, I guess. I don't quite know where they got this information, but they were arguing that the book denies the abuse and the harms that were caused by the residential schools. And I believe Tony Goulet even implied that we were denying that the residential schools existed at all, which is one of the problems with this terminology of residential school denialism, which, if you just took that description literally, you would think that that meant you're denying the existence of the residential schools. And that's not a clear term at all. It was developed by the academic Sean Carlton, basically to smear his opponents and discourage debate on the residential schools.
Okay, and so what are you saying? If that's what they're saying? What are you saying your book says, and how is it different from what they're representing?
Well, the book completely recognizes the abuses that occurred at the residential schools and realizes that there were serious problems. Many of the articles, there's a whole bunch of different articles. First of all, it's not written by one person. There's over 15 contributors to this, and basically it's understood that there were terrible problems with the residential schools, logistical, and also the difficulties of abuse and insensitivity and underfunding and so on. The main issue that we are talking about in the book is the Kamloops case and the false claim that was made by Roseanne Casimir on May 27th, 2021, that the remains of 215 children had been found on that site. And there is no evidence at all for the existence of remains on that site. And it is highly improbable that there will be such remains, because not one parent has said that their child never came home from the Kamloops Indian Residential School. So the book is largely about trying to correct information that was spread about that case, but it also tackles the issue of whether the residential schools were genocidal or not. So it's taking issue with that claim of the residential schools being genocidal.
Okay, and what do you think would benefit? Like, to what benefit do you think it would help, like that group in Kamloops, like, to lie about that?
Well, they obtained $7 million for making that claim. And there's all sorts of other disputes and dispersions of transfers that have been made because of the implication that genocide was perpetrated against not just that group, but Indigenous people. So what people don't understand with respect to Indigenous policy is that there's a huge industry that is built up around these legal disputes, and the residential schools and all the settlements that have happened, as well as, the whole claims about genocide, are a way of extracting transfers. And this is not beneficial at all for ordinary Indigenous people. They're not the ones benefiting. It is the lawyers who are initiating these disputes that are benefiting.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. So I've just wondering. I've been covering local government for a while, and normally they're pretty disorganized. They can't find. They're very disorganized. So I'm just wondering how. What information you have to suggest that a government, like a whole series of different governments, these different Indigenous governments, would go about creating a conspiracy this vast, like how they would be able to keep that under wraps.
It's not a conspiracy. And in fact, it's due to the media's complete failure, the failure of the media and people like yourself. Why are you not investigating these claims that are being made and trying to see what evidence there exists? The media has been absolutely terrible. And the thing, what happens is, and this is what's going on in Quesnel right now, if you are a critical thinker and you analyze the evidence, and this has been done in many articles, and I myself have a piece in there called Billy Remembers, which investigates these claims in depth. If you do that, you will be hit very hard with accusations of racism, your hatred for Indigenous people. And because most people, myself included, want to be someone who helps to deal with the terrible problems that Indigenous people are facing, getting accused of these sorts of things makes it very difficult to pursue the truth on the residential school file. It's not a conspiracy. People follow their own interests. And there's money to be made by claiming
So-
that there's unmarked graves in all these areas.
Okay, pause just for a
Okay.
second. Very interesting so far. I mean, just the temperament and the tone of these two women couldn't be more different. Frances Widdowson, absolutely authoritative, at the same time knowledgeable as compassionate. She's not denying that there is social dysfunction on Indian reserves. Of course there is. Only a blind person would say otherwise. She's describing what we have all seen, a claim that 215 children were found. Jagmeet Singh called it a mass grave. No excavations, it's just ground penetrating radar, which is not meant to detect bodies. It's meant typically to detect, mineral deposits. And you'll notice the first instinct of Jordan Tucker was, how can you say everyone's lying? Why do you doubt not just one government, but all these governments? And her voice starts to become agitated and frail. But so far her argument is simply, how can you possibly mistrust government? Why are you right and they are all wrong? As if being right and wrong is a matter of a vote or something. You'll see throughout the interview that Frances Widdowson says, pursue the truth. She's about getting the truth. And, let the heavens may fall, but let the truth and justice be known, which is very different from Jordan Tucker of the CBC. She's not about unearthing the truth. She's not about asking challenging questions of powerful people. And by the way, the chief of an Indian band is extremely powerful, much more powerful in their own context than, say, a mayor of a city. Anyways, back to the interview, but you can see it's changed. And you can hear the agitation in Jordan Tucker's voice, whereas Frances Widdowson, she's been through this 100 times. By the way, sometimes I interview people on my show about a book, and I haven't read the whole book yet. I've skimmed it, or I've read a blurb about it. I just don't have time to read a 200 or 300 page book before interviewing someone on my show. I wish I did. But what's so interesting here is this was obviously an attack on Frances Widdowson and the book Grave Error, which was edited by Tom Flanagan and Chris Champion. And as you heard, it had a bunch of essays in it. Jordan Tucker didn't even crack the spine. She didn't even look into the book. She was sent on a mission to destroy Frances Widdowson, but she was sent in completely unarmed. All right, back to the tape.
So today, Kamloops is having, they're doing a sealed meeting with the Catholic Church to obtain all the different documents from the residential school about all the different children and all the different things that went on. If they were to uncover, if those files were to say, the files from the church were to say, yes, these children died, would you accept that as being proof that you were wrong?
Well, we all know that children died at the residential schools. That's not the same thing as saying that there's these clandestine burials in an apple orchard. We have death certificates of children.
I'm saying if there's,
if the records say that a bunch of priests murdered children, would I accept that? Yes, if
yes.
There were records that said that. But that's not going to happen, and it's a ridiculous assertion. We don't have any parent who's saying that their child never came home. Who are those 215 children who are buried in the apple orchard? It doesn't make any sense. And journalists need to be using their critical thinking skills and their journalistic abilities and stop pandering to this ridiculous kind of claims.
I don't need you to raise your tone like that.
I'm getting a bit tired of the sorts of claims that are being made after 3 years and have been called every name in the book and having incompetent journalists who cannot do their jobs.
I don't need you. That's not helpful for our line of questioning right now.
Well, it doesn't matter at all what you think. You do your job.
I'm going to keep asking my questions, which is my job. And what I'm asking you to do now is not to yell at me.
Well, I'm not yelling.
Okay, stop there. Frances Widdowson has a strong voice. It's a confident voice, and she's certainly projecting. And maybe that comes from being a lifetime of a professor. I wouldn't say she's shouting or yelling. I think she's had the same, she's talking like this, a strong, confident voice. I mean, I would say it's a loud voice, it's a strong voice, but to see she's yelling at this journalist shows that it's all about the journalist and her feelings and the microaggressions and her rainbow glasses. And, the fact that she is saying, you can't talk to me that way. The reporter's job is to observe and report what she observes, not to fight with the source. If Frances Widdowson is a little loud or a little noisy, deal with it. Don't have a pout in the middle of your job. You are not the story, Jordan Tucker. I think it was slightly mean of Frances Widdowson to say, I'm sick of dealing with ignorant journalists. I think it's true here. And, imagine if your killer question is, Professor Widdowson, what if today the Catholic Church admits they murdered 215 people? Okay, well, that would be quite a bombshell. Imagine hanging your hat on that. All right, I got to resist because I'm going to be jumping in every second otherwise. Watch some more of Jordan Tucker, the CBC versus Frances Widdowson.
That gets in the way of my ability to ask you the questions. Okay.
All right.
So, who invited you to the Quesnel Council?
I'm not going to say that because there's terrible censoriousness that's happening in Quesnel, and people are punishing people for discussing this book. So it's not fair to these people.
Was it someone related to the mayor, or
I'm not going to answer that question, and you can understand, being a journalist, how anonymous sources are important in certain circumstances.
When you say censoriousness, what do you mean by that? What does that mean?
Demands for punishment and trying to actually have censure against people who try to speak freely against these ideas, about these ideas.
Can you give me an example of that happening?
The son of Pat Morton has Sean Carlton trying to encourage people to destroy her tax business. Not her tax business, her son's tax business.
Isn't that how the free market works, though, where you can choose not to go to a business if you don't like the people who are running that business?
Having a professor make all sorts of outlandish claims about someone, many would say defamation, which should be pursued in the courts, to encourage people, rather than discussing things and trying to understand things more, but to punish people and to ruin their livelihood is absolutely shocking, and people should be very worried about what's happening in Quesnel right now.
Hey, stop just for a second. By the way, Frances Widdowson was drummed out of Mount Royal University. She alluded to that at the beginning. An arbitrator found that she was improperly and illegally handled, and that being sacked over her points of view was unacceptable. But the arbitrator said the relationship had deteriorated so much that they weren't going to order the university to take her back. So she received some sort of payment. At least that's the latest that I've read. So this reporter was talking to someone whose entire career was canceled illegally and by smears based on her content. And you can see the question, who invited you? Was it someone's son? Was it so-and-so? That's not important journalism. That's an attempt to find someone and bully them. So much of journalism on the left is to pretend that you're calling in your capacity of a journalist, but actually be an activist. It goes something like this. Oh, I see you're running an ad on Rebel News. Well, Rebel News does this, and this wrong. My deadline is in 2 hours, so I have two ways I can write the story. One is your company is advertising with evil Rebel News. Or number two, story which I'd prefer to write, is that you've dumped Rebel News. So which story is it? It's not real journalism. It's bullying. And you can see that Jordan Tucker, that's what she aimed to do. She was trying to smoke out, well, who brought you to town? Was it so-and-so? Why are you upset that someone's family's tax business is being destroyed? Because we're all bullying it. Isn't that the free market? Never heard the CBC call for the free market before. Never forget, the CBC is first and foremost a political organization that answers to the prime minister, that carries water for the Laurentian elite. And in this case, the official narrative of what happened to Kamloops, or as the rest of us call it, Kamloops. All right, let's keep listening.
I mean, that's not an actual argument.
If
saying that
we
people
should be
worried
fighting against,
is not an actual argument.
well,
That's just
we
that's
should.
just a bid for emotion. That doesn't tell me why they should be doing this, or what it is that. There's lots of things for people to be worried about. Okay, so are your travel expenses being paid by anyone, or are you paying them yourself?
We'll see what washes out of the whole thing.
What do you mean by that?
It depends on how much the expenses are, but I don't really see why I have to justify my travel to Quesnel to people. I'm coming perfectly.
Well, if you were invited.
I was invited, yes.
And you won't tell me by who. And I'm wondering, are you selling books? What's your motivation to go?
First of all, I received no money whatsoever for the books. So there's people claiming that I'm doing this because I'm trying to sell books. I get no benefit at all from those books. So that's just trying. The reason why I want people to read this book is because it provides information which is not being disseminated through the media, which one would expect to be happening in a free and democratic society with a free press.
Don't you think that it's quite like a lot of trouble to go to say that 215 children died in order to get $7 million? There's a lot of other ways to get $7 million.
Well, it's a general benefit, that is a financial benefit that's brought by doing that. The more you can exaggerate the harm that has been caused, the more money you'll be able to extract on that basis. And it's been very lucrative, not just for the Kamloops band, but there has been $250 million that has been dispersed since that announcement was made in May 2021.
So, because there've been over 6,000 bodies found at this point.
Whoa, stop right there. Stop right there. Okay, you're dealing with a leading professor on the subject, Francis Widdowson, and then you have Jordan Tucker, whose expertise is playing Pokemon Go and how that game will revitalize a decaying urban downtown. You just heard her say that there have been 6,000 bodies found. Now, you're not an expert and I'm not an expert. Have you ever heard that before? Have you ever heard that before? Let's see what Francis Widdowson says. Take a look.
What bodies have been found?
I'm going with information from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and then various other government bodies.
No, but you said 6,000 bodies have been found.
That's the current number. Yeah, that's on.
And you say the Truth and Reconciliation Commission says that 6,000 bodies have been found?
Can I complete my questions, please?
You're the one who made that claim. And as a journalist, you should be concerned about the accuracy of your claims.
Yes, don't worry. I'm very aware of what my job is. Thank you.
Well, you haven't been doing a very good job so far.
I don't need you to provide feedback. I don't need that at all. I need you to answer my questions.
Oh, okay.
Well, you made a false claim, and I am telling you that your claim is false. And you should be more concerned about the accuracy of information.
I'm going to keep asking my questions. I don't need you to browbeat me. That's not helpful. That's not what we're here to do.
Well,
stop for a second. So sometimes a question is asked, here's a fact, what do you say about it? It's sometimes called the premise of a question. 6,000 bodies were found. What do you say about that? Well, I disagree with the premise of the question. What is your source from the premise? I can't answer the question. It's a loaded question because it's based on something that's factually not true. Can you tell me the source of 6,000 bodies? Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Really? Who do you think has read that? Do you think Francis Widdowson has read that? Or do you think Jordan Tucker, who just finished doing a story about Pokemon Go, has read it? Jordan Tucker, who has not read the book Grave Error. Jordan Tucker, who's whose questions are focused on who's paying your travel here? Who gave you an invitation here? Isn't it the free market that we're allowed to bully people who disagree with us? And your point is just a bid for emotion, not an argument. She's quarreling with Frances Widdowson. And when Frances simply asks, what's your source for the premise of your question? How can I answer your question if it's based on a falsehood? Oh, don't you ask me questions. Don't browbeat me. This is the consummate CBC reporter. It won't surprise me if soon she becomes president of the organization. All right, play some more tape.
Okay. So, I can find you some documentation later and send it to you that says the number of children's bodies that have been found so far with this LiDAR. I don't need you to interrupt me while I'm speaking. That's not. That's
Have you ever met anyone so
your
thin-skinned in your life? Have you ever met? I mean, sometimes I have a debate. But when I'm out in the world, sometimes doing streeters, you know what I'm talking about? When I'm on the street and I encounter someone who's a hot potato, at least when I'm on my best behavior, I just shut up and I let the hot potato bake. I let them say the most unusual things. Imagine being a reporter that when you're getting spicy or interesting comments from your interviewee, you stop them and you say, no, it's about my feelings. Don't speak too loud. Don't push back. That's actually where an interview becomes great. And an interview is not just reading like a stenographer official talking points and just writing down quietly what's so interesting is that I've never seen a CBCer take this kind of a streperous, quarrelsome approach with anyone from the regime. It's what makes it so riveting is that she's so unarmed in this battle of wits that she was sent out to maul Professor Widdowson. And Professor Widdowson has a stentorious voice. But she's actually being quite pleasant and quite factual. And they've sent in a child to do a man's work. It's shocking. And Jordan Tucker has several times basically said, stop being mean to me. And you can imagine Frances Widdowson, who's obviously a professor, I'm going to guess she's 70 years old. So she's probably been a feminist pioneer is what she would have been called 40 or 45 years ago when she started. I bet when she graduated with her PhD and got a job as a professor, she was probably the first woman in the whole department. And she had to be twice as tough as any man, and she had to put aside any daintiness to elbows up in a real sense. And imagine Jordan Tucker, who just starts falling apart whenever she's pushed, and not even pushed by a man. I tell you, there's two different role models for women here, aren't there? Which would you rather your daughter take after? All right, I'll try not to interrupt so much. Keep watching.
Documentation of the 6,000 bodies of children that have been found.
Please stop interrupting me. Again, if you're saying that it's some sort of widespread conspiracy, don't you think that there would be a better way for people to obtain money than to be lying about the death of children? Children dying, children being buried in places is very sensitive. Do you think that this is something why would they do that? Wouldn't they pick a different thing that would be less harmful to the people that they know, the people in their communities?
Have you finished? Are you claiming that I'm saying there's a conspiracy?
I think that it is that saying that communities have hopped on to an idea of pretending that children are dead in order to get a lot of money would be a very outrageous thing for a bunch of people to say, especially when I'm quite sure that that would be something that the rest of their community wouldn't go along with. And given that small communities are very bad at lying, they're very bad at keeping secrets from each other, either everyone would have to be going along with this vast conspiracy, or they would just have to be very cruel. and be totally fine with saying that all these different children were dead and they were and misrepresenting it. So which is it? Are they liars or are they cruel?
They're not liars. There's no conspiracy. If you can let me speak for a little while, I would appreciate it. What happens is that there are these stories that are going around in communities based upon things that have been done by a defrocked United Church minister by the name of Kevin Annett. Because of the distress that exists in communities, which are very distressed, this tends to be something that has influenced the memories of people, did occur, just don't interrupt me, as occurred in the case of the satanic panic that happened in the 1980s and the 1990s. Quite a similar situation, which I document in Michelle Remembers. Those people were not lying. They are people who are distressed, who have their memories influenced by these sorts of things. And because money can be made from this, that's why you see these things catch fire within these communities.
So why were they distressed then?
Because of
why were they so distressed?
Because of the terrible social dislocation that's happened in Indigenous communities, the isolation, the dependency which exists in these communities, the terrible fetal alcohol syndrome rates which exist in these communities. So that's why there is so much distress in these communities.
Stop just for 1 second there.
So,
see, what Jordan can't process here is that she hates Frances Widdowson. I mean, it's obvious. She can't bear to hear her talk. She's accusing her of browbeating her. She's basically fighting with her instead of interviewing her. But in the last 30 seconds there, you saw Frances Widdowson show compassion for the state of affairs on Canadian reserves, fetal alcohol syndrome, the distress, the social chaos. And for her to use those phrases to honestly and forcefully describe the tragic situation of First Nation, especially on reserve in Canada, Jordan Tucker doesn't know what to do because she doesn't have the facts at her fingertips. She clearly doesn't have any sharp questions written down. She just knew that Frances Widdowson was evil and Jordan Tucker was standing up for Indigenous people. And she doesn't know how to process the fact that, in fact, Frances Widdowson not only is a lot smarter than Jordan Tucker and a lot better informed, especially on this issue, but I think it's pretty clear she cares more. So what can young Jordan do? Let's watch a bit more.
Are you saying that they all imagined this? Like this is all imagined?
First of all, no one ever said that 215 children were murdered in Kamloops. No person said that. What you have is ground penetrating radar seeing anomalies, and it was assumed that this must have meant that there were 215 children that were buried clandestinely in an apple orchard. So no one was going around saying 215 children were murdered at Kamloops before the GPR came about.
So, okay, but to be clear, you're saying that these people have imagined this.
Stop again. Stop just for a second. So words are important, and you'd think a journalist would know that. I mean, that's why Jagmeet Singh, when he used the phrase mass grave on TV, not even the chief, not even the ground penetrating radar person called it a mass grave. That was Jagmeet Singh's own addition to the story to get himself some TV time. And this reporter talked about murder. And Frances Widdowson said, no one is even accused. I mean, imagine 215 murders. Like, that would be insane. At worst, people are saying there was a bunch of unmarked graves, but that there were murders, 215 murders. As Frances Widdowson said, no one has actually made that accusation. No one is that insane. No one can take the ground penetrating radar anomalies and say, it's a stretch to say they're people because they're just anomalies down there. Could be anything, could be metal, could be a septic tank, a septic field. It was one theory I read. But to add on the murder So you know that they're babies and you know they were murdered. And how do you know this? Because you don't know anything about what that is, let alone who they are. And the contrast between not just a know-nothing. A know-nothing is a blank slate. Jordan Tucker isn't just a know-nothing. She is full of poisonous lies. I can't believe that Frances Widdowson has the patience for this. And she just won't even grant that even this crazy thing could be false. I think we may be dealing with literally the worst reporter in Canada. All right, let's play some more. I'll try not to interrupt.
For example, there's
And it's because
there's
of
particular cases that you can look at.
alcohol-induced brain damage in their children. Like is that what I'm hearing?
No, you were asking me why they were so distressed. And I was saying that was one of the causes of the distress. You have people who have suffered from various things, and that makes them highly emotional and suggestive to think various stories like what Kevin Annette was putting forward. And you have people like Billy Coombs, who's one of the eyewitnesses. There's only, as far as I know, if you read Billy Remembers, which you probably won't do, it has 2 eyewitnesses that have actual accounts. Everything else is secondhand. So it's not those people who have these stories. It's just recounting stories of others. So you have 2 eyewitnesses.
And then so is it that these people then, all these different other Indigenous communities, they thought it was a good idea and they started also kind of mass hallucinating these deaths due to sadness?
Well, this is people who evidently, there's stories in the community. For example, Pine Creek, there were stories that there were people buried in this church. And so what they did is they went and took a GPR machine down there and they saw that there were anomalies there. They dug up that basement of the church and there were no remains there. So someone had this kind of story that they'd heard about people being buried in this church. This is the kind of thing that's happening.
Okay, so I think I have a pretty good idea of what you're saying.
Do you really think she's been paying attention?
In Quesnel?
No.
Okay. And then are your travel expenses being covered?
Well, I'm going to see how much they are. If I can cover them myself, I will. But if they're going to be a large amount, then I will try to raise money from my various associates.
Okay, and which associates are those?
I know a lot of people through the Indian Residential School's research that's being done. So there's a group that I interact with, and we're right now. I don't anticipate it being the expenses being all that high, but it's hard to know in advance. But I'm not making any money off of this.
How long are you going to be in Quesnel for?
For a couple of days.
And are you doing any other events while you're there?
I'm hoping to. I was hoping actually to do a presentation in a public forum type of situation, but we'll see how things go. It depends upon demand, I guess. But what I really would like to do is have these documents which I have obtained, which are on the agenda for the April 2nd meeting, and ask the councillors who denounce grave error without ever having read the book, ask them some questions about what they are putting into the public record at that meeting.
So the federal government, the provincial government, the municipal government in Quesnel, they all say that, yes, these things have happened. There are children buried in apple orchards.
Stop. Is that true? Is that true? Or has this reporter just filled in the blanks with her own imagination? That they were murdered, that there were 6,000 such cases across the country, and now that all levels of government have agreed with her made-up facts. I have never seen any interview like this. That Kathy Newman interview on Channel 4 was incredible. But I am so embarrassed for Jordan Tucker and the CBC. This is something that a high school journalism class should fail, let alone journalism school let alone a professional journalist at the CBC. Unbelievable, but absolutely believable. Keep rolling.
Are all of those different governments lying? Like, are all of those different people
Governments never lie,
just not
don't you know?
telling
The
the truth,
CBC knows.
or they're going along with these stories imagined by people, by Indigenous people?
Are you saying
Why
that
would-
the federal and provincial government are saying that there's children buried in that apple orchard?
I'm asking why all of these different people at all these different levels of government, all these different intelligent, thoughtful people who've worked really hard and learned a great number of things to get to their positions, why they would all be so, why it would happen that they would all be so stupid. If that's what's going on, if the truth is as you're reporting it to be, then how is it that all of these government officials are so have been so connived?
Well, first of all, the onus is on the people who are saying that there's 215 children buried there to provide that evidence. If you
And they
saw,
have provided it.
What's
and,
that?
And they have provided it, and the majority of people are quite satisfied with.
Are you as a journalist? Are you satisfied with the evidence?
I am, of course, I am.
You think that there's 215 children buried in the apple orchard in Kamloops?
I think that at this point, there has been enough documentation. There have been enough.
What documentation?
There's enough social and archaeological consensus to say that.
Social consensus.
To say that we can just believe Indigenous people and move on with trying
just
to
believe them.
do our best by
There's
them
a
as
social
society.
consensus. Just believe it. Believe this reporter.
So I'm just going to repeat this again to make sure I haven't misunderstood you. You are saying that there are 215 children buried in the apple orchard. There is evidence to show that there are 215 children buried in the apple orchard in Kamloops.
I think that
Oh my God, this is
I'm wondering why it's so important to you to discredit this.
Yeah, why don't you just shut up and go along with us?
I believe in the truth. I think the truth is important. Do you think the truth is important?
I'm going to ask, do you...
I think she's about to cry. I think she's about to cry. Boy, that's a long pause.
You should read Grave Error.
It's good advice.
I think you really need to read that book because you do not have an understanding at all.
Ma'am, I don't need that from you. Thank you.
Well, you are a seriously incompetent journalist.
Truth.
I don't
And
think
this is
yelling at
what
me
the
is help,
CBC has
ma'am.
sunk to these days.
It's
I don't
true.
think that you accusing me or shouting at me is very helpful
No one's shouting, sister.
to your case.
Well, I don't really think I'm shouting at you. I'm just telling you, for someone who is here doing an
I don't.
interview on
Ma'am,
this case.
please stop. Please stop. That's enough. This interview is now over. Thank you for your time.
Well, you're going to hear more about this.
And there you have it. Listen, thank you for bearing with it. I know that was long, but if you're like me, that was riveting. Jordan Tucker, I've never seen anyone quite like her. I say again that this was recorded a year ago, but actually Frances Widdowson only put it on her YouTube page yesterday. I know it had sort of sneaked out in a few other places. I just had missed it. So I'm a bit late off the draw. But everything that happened there, you know it's still happening. I've just never seen an interview like that. Kathy Newman perfected the "so you mean to say" straw man response, but I haven't seen some of these. Like, there's a social consensus that it's true. I don't need any facts. I'm going to make up facts, and when you tell me they're wrong, I'm going to say, stop browbeating me, stop shouting at me. That was just incredible. And you know what? What a pity that Mount Royal University students are deprived of a no-nonsense, patient, fact-bearing professor as Frances Widdowson. What a shame. And what a shame that the CBC is full of Jordan Tuckers. That's our interview for today. That's my monologue. That's my monologue for the day. Really, it was Francis Widdowson's monologue. Stay with us. More ahead.